John Kerry is making it a very loud, vocal agenda that's the purpose. It is to pay reparations from one nation to another nation.
Yeah, and AOC's chief of staff said, the Green New Deal really wasn't a climate change thing. It was a how do you change the economy thing. We have Ottmar Edenhofer, for example, who was at the third working group of the last IPCC report, essentially said this is about changing the way we do the economy, not really about climate change. So they've thrown off the mantle of using climate change as an example or hiding behind it. They're really interested in changing the economic structure of the planet.
Well, and when you start from the economic structure standpoint, America's always been about individual liberty. You go back to the founding, and they actually put in the Constitution patent rights that were delivered to the individual, he, she, or they. The British, by contrast, had the big science societies, and the great science societies weren't nearly as inventive as the individual entrepreneur. And so liberty at the individual level has produced massive success economically. But what you're talking about is this climate effort. Sounds like a Rahm Emanuel, never let a serious crisis go to waste. They have invented a serious crisis, and now they're trying to capitalize on it. Am I getting that right?
I think so. I mean, early on there were, and I can't classify everybody with the same brush. I mean, there are people who are true believers. There are people who are useful idiots. There are people who really are working behind the scenes and don't really care about the environment, but it's a nice mechanism to get to where you want to go. And so that's one of the issues. I mean, my advisor told a group of students, he said, I'm really torn on this. With respect to the climate, I see them making all sorts of claims about how the climate is changing, and I don't see it at all. But as a progressive, I think the patterns that they're attempting to change are the kinds of things I want to see. And so it was sort of like he wasn't coming out and saying the ends justify the means, but I think for a lot of people, that's exactly what it is, that we can use this climate change issue to make changes to the way in which we've done business.
Well, it's frightening to me because across the spectrum, scientifically, we're relegating, we're pushing the truth down and the political agenda up. And again, I go back to the British science societies or even the American science societies. In the early 1900s, I read a New York Times article. It says it will take 10 million years for man to learn how to fly. 10 million years. And a few weeks later, the Wright brothers, bicycle repairmen, are flying. So it's frightening because it seems like there's a hidden agenda behind here. Who's benefiting from all of this forced fear-mongering of the climate?
I think there's a lot of people benefiting, and that's the problem. I mean, the globalists sort of get everybody together under the same wing. There's people in the United States are looking to change the way in which we do things. And climate change becomes an easy example of how you need to go along with the government.
Well, it frightens me a little bit. I'm reading about the Dutch farmers complaining because their land is being taken away from them. Other farmers not able to use fertilizers and so forth. It seems like by preventing a crisis that doesn't exist, we may be causing another crisis or several crises like food, energy, water, and so forth.
Yeah, I think that goes back to the argument that Paul Ehrlich was making back in the 1970s that we need fewer people. I think there's a lot of population reduction measures in place all across the spectrum, from abortion to euthanasia. And so there's a lot of case where people want fewer people on the planet, and climate change is, again, one of the ways in which you can argue we need fewer people.